Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Hutchinson. You can check out new episodes of the show every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. If you missed an episode or want to get more information about the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com. Season 1 of the TV version of Building the Future is now streaming online at buildingthefutureshow.com. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Kevin Hutchinson, founder and CEO at MyTaskit. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I think when we kind of connected months ago in Florida, you kind of have an interesting approach of how kind of MyTaskit came to be, and I think what you're doing with the product is actually really interesting and really cool. But maybe before we kind of get into what exactly it is, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Sure. I grew up in the Midwest.
Okay.
A small town in Oklahoma, in the United States called Pauls Valley, Oklahoma.
Okay.
So was there through high school and then went to the University of Oklahoma, the great Big Red Sooners.
Okay, sure.
In Norman, Oklahoma. Yeah. And
what did you take there?
For IBM after that.
What did you take in university?
Sorry?
What did you take in university?
MIS, so Management Information Systems,
Okay.
a degree in management with an area of concentration in Management Information Systems.
Okay, so what made you kind of want to go into that?
You know, it was interesting. I started my academic career focusing on petroleum land management. I was going to be a PLM,
Okay.
And the oil industry was booming. And in the middle of my college career, the oil industry had a bust.
Okay.
And so I was always interested in improving businesses through computers and had done it sort of on the side. So it just kind of became my focus. MIS was a new degree back in those days, in the mid-'80s. They had just started coming out with the Management Information Systems degree, which is the combination of business and computers. So it seemed a good fit.
No, that's very cool. So you graduate, you said you started working at IBM?
I did.
Okay.
I was there for 10 years.
Okay, what did you do there?
So I did a lot of different things. First joined the company in their contracts division, actually, and learned a lot about their contracts negotiations and contracts management and administration, and then moved into sales, and then moved into management and sales management, and ultimately moved into what's called systems integration services, where we focused on how we can help clients connect disparate products and make products from different companies work well together.
Got you. Okay, interesting. And so after a decade, you were ready for a change, or kind of why did you move on from IBM? Yeah,
so IBM was going through some tough times at that time. Actually, it's gone through one of its first really quarters of loss, and they were making a lot of changes. I stayed with them until it became profitable again. But through all of that, figured out I wasn't really the corporate guy. Things didn't move fast enough for me.
Got you.
Loved IBM, loved the training and everything that they did for me. Still bleed blue today. But it was time for me to kind of get other flavors, other things.
Sure.
I was recruited to come work at Oracle in San Francisco in corporate business development, helping them strategically move from a products-based company to a solutions-based company.
Interesting.
So I jumped over to Oracle and learned a lot about the healthcare industry, which took me into startups. Got you.
Okay. And then from what I understand, you've moved around quite a bit throughout America, correct?
I have, yes. I've been born and raised in Oklahoma. I moved to Texas, then moved to New York. Worked out of New York for a while. I was in Washington, D.C. For about 10 years, and now down in Florida.
So how did you end up down in Florida?
So this is more of a personal decision. We launched MyTaskit, which the parent company is known as My Villages.
Okay.
And we launched that company up in Washington, D.C. area in end of 2011, early 2012.
Okay.
And it's something, we're big boaters. So we had boated the Chesapeake Bay for a decade.
Okay.
And the Potomac River areas, and really wanted to get down to Florida and do a lot of boating in the Bahamas.
That doesn't sound terrible.
Yeah, that's not bad at all. I can leave the dock and I can be in the Bahamas in 3 hours. So
oh, really? It's that
nice run.
It's that close, yeah. Hey? I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. That's awesome.
Yeah,
okay.
So that's what brought us to Florida.
Okay, that makes sense. And so I know my task it kind of came out of some other things. How did you kind of, or what kind of gave you the idea to start kind of doing it? You mentioned kind of boating, but what made you decide to start building kind of products around that industry?
Well, it's actually a lot of my past career was focused on what's known as care coordination.
Okay.
We built one of the first electronic medical record systems in healthcare, and we sold that to GE. And then we
Okay.
had built one of the first physician portals where physicians could gather together and share recommendations and advice and counsel with each other. And that was known as Medscape. We sold that to WebMD.
Okay.
Then I built a company called SureScripts, which actually we connected all of the United States pharmacies with all of the United States physicians.
Oh, wow.
And we enabled electronic prescriptions to go get rid of the paper script. And so that now we could transmit prescriptions from the doctor office to the pharmacy electronically, but also let doctors look up medication history for patients so
Right.
that they prescribe safer drugs depending upon what other drugs you might be taking. So we grew that into a very successful business. I was doing advisory work for two presidents' administrations, both President Bush Jr. as well as President Obama,
Oh, wow.
on the build out of the National Health Information Network for the United States.
Wow.
And during that process, I realized there's so much we're doing around patients and care coordination around patients. There's so much more we could do outside of healthcare to help people manage the things that they own,
Sure.
like boats or RVs or homes, because a lot of that is done through voicemail and email and text messaging, and which is what a lot of was going on in healthcare. And so we decided, if you think about the boat as a patient, or if you think about the home as a patient that needs
Interesting.
maintenance, needs service. So we took those learnings of care coordination from healthcare and decided to apply them into the asset world.
That's actually really interesting. And I think that's actually I think that gets a lot of people thinking, right? Because if you take something and a lot of times you can move it to other industries. And I love the fact that you did that basically and created a whole other kind of startup based around that.
Oh, yeah. And trust me, all of my friends and cohorts in healthcare think I'm crazy that have left healthcare and gone off to do this crazy thing what they think it's all about boating. And it's really not all about boating. It's where we started.
Sure.
And it's where we're focused. But it certainly applies to a lot of other things. And it is, everyone thinks industries are all different. And certainly they have their uniquenesses. But
Sure.
when you focus in a certain area, in this case, service workflow. Physicians are simply mechanics for patients. Certainly they don't like to be viewed that way, but they are.
Yeah, and I don't think you mean it in a negative term, right? It's just
No.
like, yeah, exactly.
Not at all.
So
They're very educated, smart, but you have to diagnose, you have to look at the symptoms, you have to come up with a service plan, you have to, treat the patient.
totally.
And same kind of thing on boats. You bring a mechanic in there, they have to hear the noises, they have to diagnose, they have to figure out a game plan, how they're going to fix it, what it's going to cost, and how do you better maintain, your body? How do you better maintain your boat to avoid those issues in the future?
Sure. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. So how did you kind of get the first version of this kind of My Tasket kind of up and going? Did you self-fund this? Did you build it yourself? Did you kind of bootstrap it a little bit? Like, how did you kind of get the first kind of iteration, kind of alpha versions of these going?
Yeah, so we self-funded it for sure in the early days. We have a lot of additional investors in the company now, but we actually created the company, and the parent company is still known as My Villages.
Got you.
And the concept behind My Villages is, if you think about it, we live in a bunch of different villages with respect to service.
Okay.
If I own a home, I use a different electrician than if I need an electrician for my boat or an electrician for an RV. They may all be electricians, but those are different villages, an RV, a boat, a house, different service people that I work with in different places. So the concept was that we would build out these different villages, and we created the boat village first.
Gotcha.
And it really was going back to the days of the portal that we built to allow physicians to share information and advice and recommendations and service plans. And so we built that out, called the Boat Village, allowing manufacturers, industry experts, boat owners to post advice. And we loaded it up with about 30,000 pieces of recommendation about how often to change 100-hour oil change, 200-hour service, 500-hour service on a Volvo engine, a Mercury engine. And we kind of put that, what was called quality care guidelines in healthcare, we put that into a database for the boating industry so that you could automatically get reminded, when you were coming due for certain maintenance.
Okay.
So that was all under the Boat Village and under the parent name company, My Villages.
Got you. Okay, interesting. So you also kind of mentioned to me before that you guys acquired a company. What was the reason you guys decided to acquire a company, and kind of how did that kind of advance the journey, right, to becoming kind of MyTaskit?
Yeah, I still go back. It was learnings that we had in healthcare. When we built the first electronic medical record system in healthcare, it had to get integrated. It had to get interfaced with the billing system in the back end.
Right.
So that when they're keeping the medical records for patients, that information had to flow because there's certain codes they use in healthcare that generate certain bills. And that information had to go from the chart into the billing system.
Okay.
So we had engaged, as we built out the Boat Village, it became clear that the industry, what they really wanted was a service, a better service process internally, as well as working with clients, allowing them to order work to be done online. But they really needed to do a better way of communicating and coordinating work between the service manager and the field technician.
Okay, interesting.
And once that became our focus, we started building MyTaskit kind of in the back end as we were launching the Boat Village and getting all the learnings from that. Along that way, we were doing an integration to a company called DocMaster. And Cam Collins, who was the CEO of DocMaster, we were focused on what data needed to move back and forth between the back office system where billing and parts and accounting are located with this service workflow platform that we were building. And as we started to do the integration, Cam had the idea and said, why don't we just bring these under one company instead of actually doing an integration between the two of us? So the opportunity presented itself, and we did that.
Oh, that's actually really interesting. So did you know Cam before kind of, or like, did you only just start kind of meeting and getting to know him when you started the integration process?
Yeah, well, really, really funny story about that. I did not know Cam.
Okay.
But when we started the company, when most times you start these companies, you usually come up with a code name, and it goes because you don't really know what the company's going to be named at first, and so you just kind of come up with a code name as you're developing this kind of idea, right?
Sure.
Our code name for before we launched the company in 2012 was DocMaster.
Okay.
And because it was focused, we knew we were going to start and focus in boating around this kind of coordination of care for boats. So we said, well, who helps with that? Well, let's just, DocMaster does. It seems to resonate. So it was kind of codenamed DocMaster.
Sure.
I didn't even know at the time there even was a company that existed that was called that.
Okay.
So along the way, Cam found us when we saw some press releases we were making about our intentions to move kind of in the service coordination world. And he reached out and said, hey, we have one of the largest back office systems for work order processing, service processing, boat sales, marina management. We have a lot of companies and clients up in Canada, actually, as well.
Okay.
They're on that DocMaster system, and now they're actually users of our coordination module as well. So Cam presented himself to us. We had moved to Florida because of boating, personal. We wanted to get to the Bahamas a lot. And Cam lived here nearby. And so it actually just kind of presented itself.
No, I think that's awesome, right? And that's the power of just networking and reaching out to people. You never know what's going to happen, right?
That's right. That's right.
So I want to dive a little bit deeper into kind of what exactly are you guys doing kind of for the boating industry, like as a service provider and like people that use the product? And then maybe let's move into kind of what other industries you guys are in now as well and kind of going to go to. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds great.
Perfect.
There's basically the best way to break it down for what we're doing is it's a service coordination platform.
Okay.
But it really has 5 core use cases for the service coordination platform. And the number one use case that appears to be what people want to start with is called technician coordination.
Okay.
And technician coordination allows the service manager to create task lists, and that's what's integrated into the work order system of DocMaster. Take those tasks that are on a work order and assign them to the technicians in the field. Let the technicians upload photos and videos for the work that was done or whatever they discovered was wrong with the boat. Helps
Gotcha.
the owner be able to see, how bad it was. They can log their labor hours. They log their comments, which normally end up on an invoice that describes what was discovered, what was done to correct the problem. And that's called tech coordination. All that information flows back into the work order system, back in the billing system, so that there's clarity around communications between the service manager and the technician. But it kind of moves into the second use case, which is client coordination. And client coordination allows boat owners to log in and add tasks. If something else they remember, the refrigerator was broken, they can add that task, to the service manager's list.
Gotcha.
And then they can also track the status of the task, of the work that's being done. And they can see photos and videos and estimates as it relates to the work as well. And that's the client coordination piece of it.
Okay. No, that makes sense. And I think that's really cool because you're right. Like when you take your car or boat in, you probably have no idea when it's going to be done or where it's kind of at, especially if they have it for days, right? Unless you
Right.
call and kind of hound them and say, where are you guys at? When can I expect my, boat pack?
Well, and that's key. If you think about how we're communicating, all of us today, email, voicemail, text messages, these are not effective means of communication when it comes to business workflow.
Totally.
At all. It's one thing to send friends and family emails and links, but if you think about it, email has gotten out of control, and it's no longer really a productivity tool.
Totally.
And we're always looking for ways to find new tools to collaborate.
Sure.
And there's companies like Base and Slack, Basecamp and Slack and others that are out there that are building these kind of collaboration platforms where you can work on projects together. We're really focused on businesses that are task-oriented, that have certain list of things they need to do, whether it's at a house or a boat or what it might be, and how do we build that collaboration platform for that? So we talked about tech coordination and client coordination, but one of the third use case that seems to be really important to the industry is they want to be able to assign tasks also to subcontractors.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
So,
that makes sense.
business to business. So you've got B2B internally as well, but you also have business to business externally with subcontractors. And if I need to get an estimate from an HVAC person who's going to do work on a boat for me because I don't have to have an HVAC person on staff,
Sure.
then I can assign tasks and I can keep it all in one place. And all of the messaging, getting away from text messaging with respect to some of this stuff, all of the messaging around that task happens inside the application as well.
Got you.
So your photos, your videos, your messages, your labor hours, your tech comments, all in one place, not scattered throughout different communication mechanisms.
Sure. No, that makes sense. So I'm kind of curious to know what other kind of industries you guys are also dealing in outside kind of the boat industry. I know you mentioned kind of a couple like RVs and housing and stuff like that, but what other kind of industries are you guys in?
Well, boating is the only industry we're in right now. It's our main focus. It's our launch industry, and we launched actually the MyTaskit platform just a little over a year ago. Even though the company's been around for about 4 years, MyTaskit as a product, and now we're doing business under the name of MyTaskit.
Okay.
It just launched in April of last year.
Gotcha.
And so we've done a lot of learnings around that, but we're getting ready to define what that next industry will be. In fact, we were just in a meeting in Boston with some planners that we've hired, consultants that are really helping us dive into the options. But if you think about property management, You could think about the insurance industry that handles claims, because we do some warranty processing stuff for the boating industry right now.
Okay.
For some of the boat manufacturers. So there's a bunch of different other industries. We've even had law firms reach out to us and said, hey, I've heard about this. We don't have a way in which to communicate with our clients except email. We'd love to let them, if they need me to review a contract, they could post a task, assign it to me, put a draft of the contract in there. They could, click on it, review the draft contract, post any comments, and we could keep in one place all the different drafts, of the contract. But to be able, they have tools they use internally to track their hours, but they have no tools to be able to do the client coordination other than email.
Right. Okay. So interesting. So how do you decide kind of what industry to move into next? Like, is that partly why you're working with this team out of Boston, or is it?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. Part of it, there's several elements to it, not to go into great detail on it, but
Sure.
One of the major elements is the applicability of what we're doing today and how it applies into another industry without having to make a lot of product modifications to it.
Right.
So some very similar issues around communication and coordination that exist with some similar workflows. So really focused on task-oriented businesses. Homes make a lot of sense because just like we're working with plumbers and HVAC and electricians and boat yards today in marine, you have a lot of that in the home environment as well, with roofers and plumbers and landscapers, technicians. And the same kind of size companies exist too. You have a lot of small, medium-sized businesses in the marine industry. And if you think about it, even in the home industry, those are usually generational businesses that have been handed down, from grandfather to son to daughter along the way.
Sure.
And they're typically small, medium-sized businesses. And that's a key point about our target market of our focus. I have a grave concern that the small, medium-sized business, this goes back to my roots in Oklahoma, of growing up in a small town, and I watched these just thriving mom-and-pop businesses in small towns. And then I watched a Walmart come in outside of town and basically decimate the downtown.
Sure.
And really put it out of business. And a lot of it was because they couldn't change fast enough.
Sure.
To meet demand. In the technology world, we have a lot of larger companies using mobile technology and taking that technology and making it a competitive advantage. And we have a whole new group of boaters coming through expecting to use that technology to engage and do business in boating.
Sure.
And that doesn't exist for the small, medium-sized businesses. They won't be able to build their own. They're going to need a ubiquitous platform in which they can engage with each other, but also engage with clients.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point, because I think, I totally agree with you, right? There's a lot, pretty much software will be kind of taking over most businesses, if not every business at some point in the next decade or two, because and whether it's like they build their own thing, but for the most part, like you just mentioned, they're not going to be able to build their own thing, and they're going to have to use a product like you guys are doing or others, right, in different industries. And I think, just for people listening, I think in a lot of cases, you can build really good businesses solving real problems for small and medium-sized businesses that can't necessarily afford or even understand the software space, right? And you're probably going to have a lot more success than, trying to be the next Instagram or something like that, right? Where you guys are building a real business for a real need, where you have like real people using it. And I'm not saying Instagram that don't have like real people using it. It's just they don't really have a business model, where you guys are,
Yeah, you're on a good point. We believe in our, now that we've brought in outside investors as well, and we're preparing to do another round raise in the second half of this year. But
sure,
those investors really believe that our product, our approach, is a more sticky approach. It's something that is, there's a lot of these things that are trends, fads. They come in, they get millions and millions of users, and then they sell off or they go away.
Totally.
And we believe that what we're building, just to the point you made, it's a much more sticky application because it's involved in the day-to-day business workflow, the day-to-day business to client relationships, business to other business relationships, not something that is just pretty replaceable pretty easily.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you think about it, Uber did this for small, medium-sized businesses. They did it for town car services and taxis and
Totally.
and others who couldn't build their own mobile apps, or even if they did, trying to get those proliferated and distributed into the consumer market would be very difficult to do because they don't want to use multiple ones for multiple companies. And they were able to build a ubiquitous platform for the transportation industry.
For sure.
And we all know that they're going into more things than transportation. They're getting into courier services, food delivery, but it's the same concept. It's the same small, medium-sized businesses that need, and they think of themselves as a logistics company, not a transportation company.
Sure.
And, we think of ourselves as a service coordination platform, and that applies to a lot of different things, a lot of different types of services.
Sure. And I love that, right? And I think the thing that also appealed to me about having you on the show is, you were in big corporate tech America, right? And you, well, and healthcare, you were in both. And, you decided to still kind of leave that or put that aside, but still take that knowledge and apply it into your own kind of startup. And, you went through a couple revisions of some things. You moved it, you merged with another company. I think I love that, right? Because that's kind of like the real story of how startups come to be, right? Where,
Right.
I'm not saying there's ups and downs, and I'm not saying how you guys went about it was any different than anybody else, because I think in a lot of cases, people don't talk about kind of the things they had to do to get to where they are now. And I love having people on the show that are willing to talk about, like, I merged with another company because they were doing this and we could benefit from this. And then, we went after this one industry because it's based on my passion plus my previous experience. I think that's awesome, right?
Yeah, Kevin, you're on a good point. I have been in the corporate world, IBM and Oracle. I've been in the startup world. I've run publicly traded companies. I've done startups with 5 or 6 people and grew them to hundreds of people. But I'll tell you this, it doesn't matter how many times you do this. The nice thing is you have the experience. But What is really amazing to me is every time I do another one of these, I think, well, we've done this before. We'll be able to avoid all that other stuff.
Sure.
You go through it every time. You go through the ups and downs. No matter how much experience you have, you're going to go through, you think you're going to go to market with a product that's going to do X.
Sure.
And you get into that market and you find out that's not, as much as you're trying to force that in, it won't go. And you have to morph and don't put the square peg in the round hole, become a round peg.
Sure.
And so you go through those. The difference in experience is you recognize it faster, and the pitfalls of not responding quick enough to those changes. But you constantly, no matter how much experience you have, no matter how many times you've done this, you're going to go through the ups and downs. And look, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't.
Sure.
Sometimes you're too early to market.
Sure.
Sometimes you've missed the market or the economic changes in the market, and you just have to you roll with that.
Sure. No, I think that's really good advice. And I think that's one thing that I really try to promote on the show is that kind of like the real story of being in a startup, right? Because so much stuff in the media is out of like the valley. And unless you're in the valley, it's not, the rest of the world doesn't operate like the valley.
Right.
But
oh yeah, I know all the valley stories.
Yeah.
I was out there for a while.
Yeah, exactly. You even lived there, so yeah, you get it. So I'm curious. You guys won some kind of awards over the last year and this year. Do you want to maybe kind of cover what exactly you guys won and why you guys were chosen?
So we won Boating Industry's Top Product Award in 2015, and we won again in 2016. And we won in 2015 because of the innovation that we were bringing to the service coordination marine industry.
Gotcha.
Enabling technicians to communicate with service managers through mobile phones,
Okay.
being able to log their hours, being able to post pictures and photos of the work that's being done, allowing consumers to see that work being done. That was doing something innovatively that had not been done before in the industry. And so that's why we won in 2015.
Okay.
In 2016, we won because we extended the product. You heard me mention before about the ability now to actually assign tasks to subcontractors.
Right.
So we extended it to allow not just within your own company and with your own clients, but now you can do and coordinate work by assigning tasks to subcontractors external of your company and bringing even more innovation to that process. And so that's the reason why we won in 2016.
Got you. So was there like a award ceremony you had to go to, or how did that kind of play out?
No, there's different categories for different things. And so you submit your application, and then they have their panel of judges, and they just make it one big announcement for a variety of companies for that year. And so we were very proud that Boating Industry Magazine selected us for the second year in a row.
Sure. So has that kind of boosted your, traffic flow to the product, or is it kind of too hard to tell, or you don't really know?
Well, it doesn't hurt.
Sure.
We know that for sure.
Sure.
And when the press release did go out about the announcement, we see our traffic volume on our websites go up. We see, inbound leads coming in where they're wanting demonstrations of the product go up. We still have to convert those into real business, and we had our record quarter in the first quarter of this year, and we broke that record in the second quarter of this year.
That's awesome. Congrats, man. That's
great.
Yeah,
thank you very much. I mean, we've grown, just this year alone, we've grown the user base 220%.
Wow.
On the Service Pros. And it looks like in third quarter, we're going to break the second quarter based upon the deals that we have in flow right now.
Wow.
So it's really taken off, and it's to the credit of the industry. We're just the tool. The industry is telling us what they want. They're telling us what they need. And we're just simply the tool that's building what it is that they want and they need to make their businesses better.
Sure. So to the point you just made about your basic, how are you getting their feedback? Are you guys using user testing, or are they just kind of emailing you? How are you getting that feedback and kind of incorporating it into your product?
Right now it's just direct face-to-face contact.
Okay.
I'm on the road a lot. I'm up in Canada a lot. I'm up in Northwest Canada quite a bit.
Sure.
We have Raven Marine and North Shore Yacht Works and Granville Island and Van Al Island and Canoe Cove, a lot of different marinas and service organizations up in the Northwest area. And then we obviously have in the Southeast and the Northeast of the United States, we have a lot of customers in those areas. I've assigned a field representative, a vice president of that region for each of those, Northwest and Northeast and Southeast. And they work daily and bring that feedback back to our product team. And then we do sessions. Our product team will go to meeting sessions, with individual customers, walking them through proposed enhancements we're going to make to the product. And we get their direct feedback on what they like about it or what they don't like about it. And we build that right into our product planning process.
That's awesome.
So the customer voice is the loudest voice in our product planning process.
Sure. So do you guys kind of have a rule where you need to hear the same either change or kind of new feature from X amount of clients before you implement it? Or how do you guys kind of decide from the feedback that you get what you're actually going to execute on?
Yeah, that's a great question, and actually makes me remember one of my favorite quotes, by Henry Ford. Who said, if I ask my customers what they'd want, they just say faster horse. Right?
Sure.
And but he had the vision of how to deliver that faster horse in a different package. And so I think that comes with experience. You hear what the customers are asking for, but you don't necessarily build it exactly the way that they're asking for it. You build it in a way in which it will be better, but will deliver the capability and functionality that they want.
Gotcha.
So it really is an art. And, Steve Jobs was amazing at this.
Totally.
So if you think about what he did, where customers were saying, I want smaller phones, smaller phones, smaller phones, and we were all headed down that path, these little things we could put in our shirt pocket and couldn't even feel them. My favorite one was the Motorola Razr.
Yeah, totally.
Amazing, right?
Yep.
And then all of a sudden the iPhone comes out, and it's this big thing, and you're like, wow, that's bigger than any phone on the market.
Yep.
But he didn't, while he listened to the fact they want smaller phones, he also heard other things that the industry really wanted to be able to do with these mobile devices. He changed the game. He changed an entire industry by doing what he knew was best. So it's a balance between the feedback you're getting and the innovation that you know you need to bring to the industry.
Sure. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's actually really good advice, because I'm always curious to know how other people kind of handle that kind of process, right? Because it can be really tricky, like you just mentioned. But I'm curious then to know, when you guys are building new features, do you ever show certain clients, or do you have like beta clients that you show maybe like wireframes or a prototype or kind of a beta version of features before you actually roll it out to the rest of your clientele?
Yeah, we do. And in fact, we have a great user experience. It's kind of a new field in technology. It used to be just called UI, user interface, right?
Sure.
Now they've taken it to another level, which is really user experience skill sets. And user experience, not only are they graphical in nature, they're really artists. They know how to, build best kind of practice with respect to product user interfaces. But it truly is the user experience itself. When I click here, what do I expect to see? If I click on this, what should I see? And that's the art. And what's amazing, the changes from when I started doing technology companies, a lot of the changes are, we used to only present like these really fancy, well thought out wireframes that used to take months to build and get exactly the way you wanted. Then we presented them to customers and said, what do you think? What would you move? What would you? But in today's technology development, it is so rapid. We don't have those kind of time frames to do things anymore. And it's one thing to, you think about the cycles, technology cycles, and it used to be, 5 to 7 years, then they were 3 to 5 years, then they're 2 to 3 years. And now you're innovating your own products in matters of months, not years anymore.
Totally.
And so you've had to move to a much quicker input way for clients. And so a lot of companies, including ourselves, have moved more to low fidelity type of quote unquote wireframes. Basically what we're talking about is you draw it on a piece of paper.
Sure.
And you're drawing it, you're using tools to draw out, what you believe is going to be, and in real time you're modifying it. I think what's amazing by that is it's actually gets a different reaction from customers, because when you show them a wireframe, if you will, that's really beautiful, it feels like it's already built, or it feels like decisions have already been made. And when you go the low fidelity route and it feels more in draft mode, the amount of input you get seems to be exponential, because they feel like they're giving real input because it hasn't been built yet.
Totally. Yeah, and they don't feel like they're going to offend you because it's so early on.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, that's really good advice.
Like, oh, you've gotten this so wrong. Look, I would never do that. It's like, well, that's just there. It's a sample example. You don't hear as much of that when they see it being drawn in a low fidelity way.
Totally. No, I think that's really good advice. So I'm kind of curious, is there any kind of other thing that you kind of see the future of MyTask going to be, or you just kind of working on trying to just maybe potentially move to other industries, or how do you see kind of the next year playing out for you guys and kind of beyond that?
Well, a lot of the feedback we're getting now is, help us with our payment process.
Gotcha.
They want to see clients be able to pay for services electronically, so we're implementing that into the product as well to allow their clients to review the work that was done, hit a button, and pay for the service electronically, much how Uber does on transportation as well. So that's coming. But the bigger part of what's coming next is really around data analytics.
Okay.
We have a lot of clients say, and especially manufacturers in the industry, say, I have no idea how often my equipment is even serviced.
Oh, interesting.
So we'll have that information. We'll know, this make and model of this generator is serviced this often, and it's serviced more often in cooler climates than it is in hotter climates.
Right.
Or you're serviced more often than by factors of 2x than your closest competitors.
I see.
So the data analytics that come out of it for industries to build better quality products is great. Also help businesses, with their, for example, their labor efficiencies.
Right.
They may, on an average, bill out their service labor 28 hours a week, 38 hours a week. Big variables. If I can bill 38 hours a week on an average per labor, per person a week, and my competitors are doing 28 hours a week, I'm a much higher efficient use of my labor source.
Totally.
So we're not divulging, of course, who those companies are, but they don't know how to compare themselves. Am I doing good? Am I doing bad?
Sure. And that's also another revenue stream for you guys then.
Absolutely. Yeah, that would be something they sign up for and register to have access to that kind of information.
Sure. That's actually quite interesting. No, that's great. I love how you are taking feedback from clients and then incorporating it and kind of rolling out new features and becoming their kind of full end-to-end solution, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, so we're kind of coming to the end of the show, so maybe let's end the show with mentioning where people can find you guys online and any other kind of social media links you want to mention.
Sure. So you can find us at www.mytasket, mytaskit.com. And we have a great website, videos, a lot of information you can find about our products, both our operations module, which is the back office system, formerly Dockmaster, and our coordination module for service coordination. And then come to our Facebook page, which is My Tasket app is our handle name. And we have a lot of information and connect with our customers on Facebook as well.
Perfect, man. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to be on the show. I look forward to keeping in touch with you and seeing kind of where you guys take this for the rest of 2016 and beyond.
All right, Kevin. Thanks. I appreciate the invitation.
Thanks, man. All right. We'll talk soon.
Okay.
Okay. Bye. Thanks for listening. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check them out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.